Well, Canadian public health officials have been humiliated yet again. In the Adamson barbecue, Adam Scully court case, which is still ongoing, they were told to come into court with evidence as to why they had to lock down the restaurants. And, of course, Eileen Davila and others came in with zero evidence and refused to answer any questions regarding having evidence that they needed to do any of these lockdowns. So we need to make sure that the public in Canada knows just how far this case has gotten, as well as the fact that it's the only lawsuit in Canada that is taking this very, very effective approach. And our public health officials have been caught with their pants down. This is one of the most interesting cases that could actually succeed. We need to make sure that all Canadians know that they couldn't provide any evidence and refuse to answer any of the lawyers' evidence. You guys remember Adamson Barbecue, Adam Scully. Let's take a look at clips from a video to remind you what happened to Adamson Barbecue. And then I'm going to bring on Jody Ledgerwood. Jody is actually an integral part with the group of people that have taken over for Adam. Lawyers and concerned Canadians have taken over for Adam so that he can have help getting this through the court system. You got to hear about this case. I actually found it interesting, and it is very different than the others. Their approach is awesome, and you need to hear about this approach and what it can mean for Canada.
Enough is enough. I complied with the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I complied again during the second wave when we locked down, when Doug Ford promised us that there would be supporting evidence to shut down the restaurants, bars, and gyms. He didn't provide it. So why are we getting singled out? And the big multinational corporations are all essential while they're packed. Come on, guys. Enough is enough. We're opening for anybody who's a fan of freedom and sovereignty.
Well, they have to follow the rules. There can't be rules for one group and not the other.
When you have the Walmarts and the Costcos of the world open, but all these little businesses shut down.
I cannot stand thinking all the big stores are open, no problem, and then killing these little people. It's just not right. It's not right before God.
What it says to me is that this virus, it isn't as dire as what they're making it out to be. They are setting a bunch of rules for us to follow, but they're the insiders. They have all the information, and obviously they don't feel it's as deadly as what's being depicted.
I just wish that they'd just follow the rules.
Yes, this is the Reopen Ontario Act, right, that I was charged under? Yeah. I will be back here as long as we can have some more support. I will be back here again tomorrow to open.
But we give the order for Medical Loss Health to shut down permanently, and he just defiantly disobeys it, then we have to throw the book at him, right? We have to. A lot of people are watching what's happening here. We have to. A lot of people are watching what's happening.
Good evening. It was another chaotic day at Adamson Barbecue in Etobicoke. This is the third day the owner, Adam Scully, vowed to defy lockdown orders and open for indoor dining. But today, police changed the locks on him before he could enter. And during the lunch hour, he was arrested.
Shame on these police! Shame on these police! Look at what they've started now! I love you guys. Move back!
Got the police blocking both sides of the entrances to the building. They've shut it down. They tried to lock it this morning. It got opened up, but they're back here to stop everything. They're handing out fines down the street for all the people that have parked down the street. They're handing out tickets. Things are very loud. We're going to see what people have to say.
Are you fearful of what's going to happen in the minutes and hours ahead if you start to fire up those grills?
No, not at all. Why would I be fearful of what's going to happen? This business probably won't make it through the winter time anyway, so I got nothing to fear. We're going to take a stand. We're going to push this as far as it goes. We'll accept the fines. We'll accept the tickets and any court summons, and we'll see if any of this is going to hold up. The emergency orders are not justified and that any of these charges won't hold up in court anyway. So I'll be the first one to stand up, be the test case, and we'll see how it goes. When everybody stands up and says enough is enough, that's when we're going to see this end.
All right, let's bring on Jody Ledgerwood. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Odessa. Nice to see you again.
You too. Well, I was really interested in this case. There's so many lawsuits, and a lot of people have gotten sort of lawsuit fatigue, because the system has been so corrupt. Now, there has been some wins, so things are changing. There's a lot of lawyers that have tried their best, really great people. But you explained to me, I'd lost track of the Adamson barbecue thing, and it's important we don't lose track. The way the group of people that are behind helping Adam have approached this, tell me why this case is different and the humiliation that we should all understand when they didn't bring in evidence and what is happening next. So why is this different from the others?
So this case is very different from the others because this case actually goes straight to the heart of judicial notice. So every case that we're seeing right now in the courts and in the past 3-4 years that we've had legal cases going forward with regards to lockdowns and mandates, most of them are failing to win and are in appeals or failing to win in the appeal process based on judicial notice, which is basically the court saying that whatever the government says is true. We're going to take it verbatim. And they're using the test of reasonableness. There was a pandemic. It was reasonable that the government impinged or imposed on our charter rights, froze them, and mandated lockdowns, mandated masks, mandated all the other things that they've mandated going forward that have caused great harm to our country. So this case is different in the fact that we are actually challenging the reasonableness of the government's decision-making process. No other case has asked for the evidence to support the reasonableness of the decisions that are being made. We are demanding the evidence to explain the reasonableness of the lockdowns. And if the government can't provide that, we win. Judicial notice goes out the window. So every other case that has been prosecuted and lost based on judicial notice or reasonableness of the decisions made will have now legitimate appeal to stand on in order to overturn all those other convictions or overturn the mootness of the cases or to overturn whatever decisions were made in those cases. So this case is really the shoulders that every other law case needs to stand on.
Mm-hmm. And backstage, we were talking about the fact that you think that if this case had happened a while ago and had won, then all these other cases would have won. The reason why the determination of the judge's decision hasn't happened is because they've been pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and stalling it. And you think it's for that reason, right? Who was stalling it? Like on what side?
So originally the courts didn't want to hear it. Based on reasonableness. They thought it was ridiculous. They didn't take it seriously as a public interest case. We are fighting on the basis that this is a public interest case. It didn't just affect Adamson Barbecue and Adam Skelly. It affected every single small business restaurant that was shut down. So many businesses have gone out of business because of these decisions that were made, which now makes it a public interest case. So it's harder to shut down a public interest case. But on top of that, the government understands by demanding the evidence to justify the Section 1 notwithstanding clause to come into place and shut down everybody's abilities to count on charter rights to protect themselves, the government has put in every possible roadblock in our way to delay this case from coming through to fruition. And at the end of the day, we know that with every motion that is filed in the court, it costs you money to fight it. And so by delaying our ability to get into the court, to be in front of a judge for 5+ years, they were hoping we would run out of money and therefore have to drop the lawsuit, which happens a lot of times in court cases. You run out of money, you can't afford to pay the lawyer's bills. Our lawyers' bills have been in excess of, oh my goodness, I would say in excess definitely of over $100,000, if not closer to the $200,000 mark. Fortunately, way back back in 2020, the beginning of 2021, a GoFundMe was set up. And right away, people understood the magnitude of this case, and approximately $300,000 was brought into play, which was amazing. And we have been hit up so hard with, well, where'd the money go? Well, what people don't understand is Adam had probably 30 plus fines that he received that were paid for. He did his best to still cover the wages of his employees that no longer had jobs. He tried to do the right thing, and he tried to keep people in their homes. Ultimately, and then we hired a lawyer that, let's just say, saw an opportunity and took it, but did nothing with it but bill and bill and bill. And unfortunately, Adam was not legal savvy at the time. He didn't have a support team working with him at the time, helping to advise. And so he kept paying these lawyers' bills that came in. And what we found out later on was that the lawyers were not effective. They were not actually doing their job. And in fact, they had missed several deadlines that the courts had for them in order to file applications and motions. And because of that, the case actually got kicked out of the courts. Now we have an amazing legal team. Ian Perry and his legal team they've just been incredible with us. They've given us discounts. They've reduced their legal fees that they would typically charge, because they understand how important this case is, not only for Adam, but for every small business out there and for every Canadian going forward. Ian Perry has a family. He understands that this case winning will have a massive positive impact, legal precedent setting impact for every case going forward, and how the government makes decisions in the future so that this kind of thing can never happen again. So even though we are about $50,000 behind in legal fees, Ian has continued to work endless hours, putting together the motions, answering every single motion that the government throws our way, and winning those motions. We won, and that's why we still have our court case. We were supposed to be in the courts back in October 2024. And unfortunately, because all of our expert witnesses had sworn affidavits under the previous court file number with Michael Swinwood's team, we had to have all of those experts re-swear their affidavits under the new court file number with Ian Perry's team. And literally at the last minute, one of our expert witnesses decided he wasn't going to re-swear his information. So we lost our court dates of October 2024. However, what we thought was a devastating blow to us, yet another roadblock we were going to have to jump over, it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because we ended up replacing that expert who was a public health expert. We ended up replacing him with a U.S. public health expert who also worked with the FDA, who had testified in front of the U.S. Congress many, many times over. So he actually has better qualifications than our original one. And he came and he did his affidavit, and he's more than happy to join our team. So thankfully, God blessed us. What looked like was going to be an absolute disaster for us ended up being a blessing in disguise. So the government has done everything they've could, including that. We think that there may have been some tampering, maybe not. We don't know. We don't have proof of. We just know it was very odd that our main expert would pull out last minute. So,
okay, a question.
Yes.
So you've had a whole bunch of witnesses come in, either the first time or this more recent one with Eileen Davila, correct me if I'm wrong, stating and showing there was no evidence that they needed to lock down these restaurants. But then Eileen Davila and them couldn't provide any evidence that they could. So considering the case is about the evidence, the way you guys are doing it smartly, the evidence that they had to do this falls on the government, but they haven't provided any. You said hundreds of questions. She said, I won't answer or don't have the evidence. How the hell can they win without absolute, dark corruption coming down on this judge saying, you cannot let them win because you told me the repercussions of you guys winning, Adam winning, means what, reversal of fines that everybody got, and then possibly suing these government people. Tell me what the repercussions can mean and why. I would be surprised if they meet this judge in a dark corner one night and say, you better do what we say.
Exactly. So the fact that Eileen Davila, we cross-examined her back last year, November, December of last year, 212 pages of cross-examination, which is up on our website, cccan.org. It's also up on the Give Send Go. If anybody wants to read her cross-examination, 212 pages of questions and answers. And more than half of those questions, she refused to answer or declined to answer or conveniently forgot how to answer. But she was the chief medical officer at the time for public health in Toronto. The decisions to lock down, the decisions regarding the Reopening Ontario Act came from her office specifically. So the fact that all of a sudden she can't remember why she made those decisions or can't provide evidence as to how she came to those decisions and evidence as to why she made the decisions to lump in nightclubs, bars, and restaurants all as one category, therefore come to her decision to lock everybody down, and you can only do takeout or you can do delivery, but with no proof as to why that decision was made. That is critical in the government's case. And just so you're aware, the province of Ontario, the city of Toronto, Toronto Public Health, and Eileen Davila personally have all been named in this lawsuit. So I think it's also the first lawsuit where we've actually seeing an individual who made the decisions actually named. And this individual is the one who made the decision. So she should have the evidence. And Section 1 of the Charter specifically says you must be able to demonstrably justify any decisions or emergency decisions you make in order to suspend charter rights of the people. She, to this day, has not provided one iota of evidence. And under the cross-examination, she should have been able to come prepared with the evidence, and she had none to offer. And she refused to even talk about the discussions she had with Doug Ford, who was our premier at the time, still is, as to why those announcements were made, why the Reopening Ontario Act came into force. She refused to even answer those conversations. How did that come to be? So if we happen to lose with no evidence coming forward, one, we've got great appeal grounds for sure. But two, it'll show how corrupt our judicial system has become and how separation of power between judicial and our government legs, there is no separation of power anymore. They are now one and the same if we lose. But if we win, oh, yes, the lawsuits that are going to be overturned, the charges, the criminal charges, how many people got criminal charges for protesting, for being out on the streets, for being in stores, not wearing a mask. And eventually the other mandates that came out of those decisions, the medical mandates that came out of those decisions that have caused so much harm and death to a lot of people, that now will open the door for massive lawsuits, not only against employers, possibly against government, possibly against health officials that actually executed on those health mandates that caused so much harm that we are now seeing statistically exploding in our healthcare system.
You know what's interesting about this one, and it's almost good that it's happening in 2026 and not 2021, is that I know some of the excuses that judges have used with the earlier on cases was, well, health officials were just doing the best they could with the info they had. They didn't know how bad this pandemic was going to be. They were looking at the fraudulent statistics, not that the judge would use fraudulent, but they were looking at the statistics. that, WHO or UN or whoever the hell was putting out these statistics. We had all this propaganda coming out of videos of Chinese people standing in China on a street and then just going boom and falling over, which is not what COVID does. But they were showing those videos. They were everywhere on social media. So do you the interesting thing about 2026 or even 2025 or 2024 is people like Eileen Crudilla, who her husband is connected to Pfizer and was receiving some sort of indirect payment from Pfizer. I remember that. So her husband was connected to Pfizer. I can't remember how. I did a show on it. It was something to do with, you might know. But anyways, back in the day, the judges were saying, well, our public health officials were just following the worldwide, what everybody else was going to do because we didn't know how bad it would be. So we're not going to throw them under the bus now.
Right.
But now it's 2026. And even when they first cross-examined her, so now she should have the evidence.
Correct.
And she doesn't.
Not only that, you brought up her husband.
Yeah.
She refused to answer questions about her husband and that he actually is her husband. She refused to even answer those questions because she understood the conflict of interest with him being her husband and being part of Pfizer's board. She refused to answer any question regarding her relationship.
He was on Pfizer. Sorry, all this trans stuff. I get confused. He was on Pfizer's board.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's even worse than I remember. I can't remember. It's all, so they're cornered right now. The judge seems cornered to me. The health officials seem cornered to me. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. They had no reason to do it. And at the time, wasn't there like one or two people that had COVID when they locked down?
Correct. I think there had been one reported death. And we know at that time, those who were being reported suddenly dying of COVID, most of those cases were false. It was a motorcycle accident or a gunshot that actually killed them. It wasn't actually COVID. So all these decisions that were being made were based on one death. And they couldn't even bring that, they didn't even mention that in the cross-examinations. And on top of that, not only did we cross-examine Eileen Davila and she offered zero evidence of why or how she came to her decisions, but we also cross-examined Dr. Hodges, who is also a health expert. And he did not, I repeat, did not refute any of our 6 expert witnesses' testimonies and the hundreds of reports and studies that our 6 experts brought to the table. And now when I'm talking about 6 expert witnesses bringing information and studies and research to the table, I'm not talking about all the current information that we now have, because we could not base this case on current information. We had to base the case on information that we knew as of November 2020. So the caseload we have of proof that 1, no pandemic, 2, no evidence to even make these decisions is astronomical. The amount of case and research and evidence we have from November 2020.
So you guys came in with that evidence with these experts, many experts, and they couldn't provide any evidence of the decisions they made back then.
Correct.
And they were saying at that time, this is a pandemic, and we know our hospitals were largely empty.
Correct. And on top of that, Dr. Hodge in his cross-examination talks about the hospitals being so full and so overloaded. And yet one of our witnesses that we also brought in was Dr. Mark Trozzi, who worked in the hospitals. He was an emergency doctor in the hospitals for well over 26 years, I believe. And he's one of our witnesses that came forward and said, actually, they weren't full. My hospital was empty. We were all sitting around doing nothing. And if you remember all the TikTok videos, if those hospitals were full, none of those doctors and nurses would have the time to make TikTok videos. And on top of those TikTok videos, you don't see a single patient in the hallway. You don't see a single bed waiting in the hallways. You go into a hospital setting now and you see beds in the hallways. You see a multitude of patients sitting in the waiting rooms. And yet there was nothing.
Well, they shut everything down. You couldn't go in there for very many reasons. And then all these COVID wards sat empty. So yeah, a lot of people were too scared to go in because the propaganda, and like died of heart attacks because they're like, oh, I'd rather just sweat it out at home, you know? Well, this is really an interesting case and how you've explained it. I don't know how they're going to get out of this one. Do you know when you guys are going to be back in court, or?
So we are actually in court February 25th, 26th, and 27th. So that is less than a week away. We will be in court. We'll have the option of online, so people can join us online. We will also have the option of being in court. Now, there are 3 different courtrooms, or 3 different courthouses that can hear this case. We have not been told yet which courthouse it'll be and which room. We're being told probably 2 to 3 days before we actually are in court. So please watch our website. Please watch the Give, Send, Go, because we will be posting, 1, the link everywhere, and 2, obviously, which courthouse it is. So if you're in the Toronto area and you want to know what's going on, we highly encourage you to go down and show that, yes, the public is interested, or flood that link. Again, to let the judge know we are watching, we are paying attention to what you're doing, to what you're saying. If you can completely excuse and ignore 6 expert witnesses, and our experts, Dr. David Gortler, he's the public health expert that works with the FDA. He's a Yale and Georgetown professor. We've got Dr. Douglas Allen. He's an economics expert to talk to the statistics about how these decisions actually economically ruined Canada, or ruined our province.
Which was the point, but that's a whole nother show.
Exactly. And then we've got Dr. William Matt Briggs, who's a statistics expert. We've got Dr. Gilbert Burdine. He's a medicine and pulmonary specialist to talk about all the harms that came that way. Dr. Henry Reish, who is an epidemiologist expert and a Yale professor. And of course, our favorite doctor here in Ontario, Dr. Byram Bridle, who is a viral immunology expert and is a professor at the Guelph University. So we have literally covered every single angle of this case with these experts. And then, of course, Dr. Mark Trozzi, he's not being treated as an expert, but he's treated as an expert witness, not an expert, who talks about emergency rooms and what those looked like at the time.
Yeah, I didn't realize Trozzi worked in the hospitals before. I didn't realize that. I'd forgotten. So much has happened. Well, this is really interesting. So remind us again. So if they go to the Give, Send, Go link,
yes,
you're going to be updating and having all the information people need on that page, correct? So they don't need to go anywhere else.
Correct. Unfortunately, our website is not working. Imagine that.
Wait. This one, the Give, Send, Go?
No. Give, Send, Go is working. cccan.org, which talks about Concerned Constituents of Canada, which is the organization that approached Adam Skelly at the beginning. We saw how important his case was, and that it's the only case that covers all 4 pillars needed for a public interest case and to call out the government evidence. We approached him and said, please file a civil challenge. We will support you. We will help you. We will. And so we've been doing this. We are a volunteer registered not-for-profit corporation. So we have been basically going through every single legal bill with a fine-tooth comb to make sure it's legit before we pay it. We don't do anything unless we're all unanimously vote on it and we all agree. We have been doing all the fundraising for the last 5 years for this case to keep it there. The Give, Send, Go was set up by Chris Weisdorf, who was one of our founding members and directors of CCCAN.
He's a lawyer, right? Lawyer?
Oh, no, Chris is not a lawyer. And it's funny because a lot of people think he is, but his father was a lawyer, and Chris is exceptionally well read and researched in the law. That is not his actual profession. And we keep begging him, you should go get your law degree. Mm-hmm. He's the first person to win an appeal regarding the Arrive can. He's the one and only person to win that. That is how well schooled he is in the law. He understands it inside and out. So he has been helping keep the legal costs low for our lawyers. So he's helping write factums. He's helping research the case law. He's helping research every single wording of every single law that we are fighting. He knows the charter inside and out. So he has been an incredible blessing on this case and with Concerned Constituents of Canada. cccan.org. Super simple. Case like this, you get attacked constantly. Our website is going down. It's part and parcel. It also tells people how important this case is. They don't take down cases that don't make legal precedent that is going to have enormous domino effects for all Canadians. As I said, anyone who got a fine, anyone who got a criminal charge, anyone who was harmed by the subsequent mandates that rolled out from these decisions that were made with no evidence, you will now have, when we win, actual legal precedent to use to fight or take, have your appeals actually heard, have charges reversed, have fines refunded, and possibly take action against those who caused you harm, losing jobs, medical harms, whatever harm came your way due to these decisions made without evidence to back it up. That is how important this case is. Cases are going to continue to lose in the courts, especially, I hear about all these lawsuits against medical manufacturers, and they're losing. They're going to continue to lose unless this case wins.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In Canada, especially because we're so screwed up here. This is the Give, Send, Go. If you'd like to donate, it's not a time for us to start snoozing on that. So maybe guys forego that latte, that 10th shirt you don't need in a different color, pink, whatever. This is really important. They've gotten so far. So consider even $5, or if you're wealthy, consider a lot more than that. And yeah, you are an auditable group that you have to follow the rules. You can't dick around. There's no skimming happening here. This is a non-profit society. I don't know if the society is the right word. Corporation.
No, our books are open for scrutiny. The government scrutinizes our books every single year. We have been very forthcoming, even on our websites, with the breakdown of exactly where every single penny has gone to. Every penny is accounted for. And people see our books are completely scrutinizable. They're open to the public. We do not take a single penny from us. We've got 4 volunteer directors. We've got Sharon Peters, John Azaparty, Chris Weisdorf, and myself. You will see not a single penny has gone into our pockets. We have run numerous amounts of fundraisers. We've done silent auctions. We've done speakeasies. We've done New Year's Eve galas. We've done Know Your Rights conferences for people. Not a single penny went into our pockets. That was all volunteered time. That was all volunteered research that we gave out to people. Mm-hmm. I even volunteered, if people donate, send me a note that you've donated, or put in the donation as you give to Give, Send, Go or e-transfer donations in, that you would like a copy of our Know Your Rights presentation. We will send that to you, because it's not just about your constitutional rights. It's about your rights with regards to real estate, with regards to insurance, with regards to provincial offenses, fines. It's a plethora of information, and we're more than happy to give people that information if you donate. We have done everything we can to raise funds for this very important case. It is a case going forward. We know, even if we win, we know the government is going to appeal this. They do not want this win to stick. They do not want this evidence on record. And February 25th, 26th, and 27th, we are putting the evidence on record. Up until this date, all evidence has literally disappeared. And we know the government just made that announcement that they were going to hide further evidence for the next 15 years.
Yep. And I think it is going to help that they tried to appeal the Emergencies Act one, and they just lost on that.
Yes.
So the Trudeau Liberal government, emotionally backed and counseled by the Carney idiot, I refuse to call him our PM.
Yes.
He's not my PM.
He's our parasite. That's what he is.
Yeah. So it doesn't help the government's case against you guys right now that they just lost that appeal.
Yes.
That's a big deal. And so I don't bring just anybody on, you guys. I get people emailing me every day. Can you bring me on about this lawsuit and that lawsuit and this fundraiser and that fundraiser? And I'm like, oh gosh. I've known you and Chris since the beginning. You guys were the original OGs back in the beginning at the same time as Adam and everybody else. And you guys are legit and professional, and you've really been working hard. You helped with the whole bus tour of the doctors. You guys ran the bus tour.
Yeah. And do no harm. And yep.
Yeah, you guys have done some pretty big stuff. The people backing Adam, the doctors, the witnesses, the people involved, the lawyers, great people. If there was any time to donate, it would be now.
Yes.
So you can feel great about yourself, So thank you so much for coming on, and we'll get this out. And you mentioned if people don't want to do Give, Send, Go, they can do an e-transfer. For people that don't use credit cards, how do they do that? Do you know?
So they can e-transfer at CCOC 4, the number 4, freedom at protonmail.com. So that's CCOC 4 freedom at protonmail.com. We also now have a P.O. box for those who, if you can believe it, people have actually mailed us cash. We know people are afraid to donate these days after the government froze people's bank accounts. So we've opened up another option. We have purchased a P.O. box for a year. You can send prepaid credit cards. We have already confirmed with Ian Perry's office that they will accept prepaid credit cards. So those are not traceable. So you can send us a prepaid credit card or send directly to Ian Perry's office if you want to make sure, because you have some trust issues. Totally understandable given our day and age that we're living in. You can send it straight to Ian Perry's office and write, this is for the Adamson Barbecue, Adam Skelly case, and he will use the prepaid credit card to cover some of the legal fees. Or you can send cash to the P.O. box. If you're in the Cobourg area, the Oshawa area, or Windsor area, that's where the 4 of us directors for CCCAN live. Feel free to drop cash off to us, which I've had many people drop cash off to my home, and then I e-transfer it in. So again, there is no traceability back to you if you are concerned. Not a problem.
Okay.
But this is a crazy case, and I will tell you this, Odessa. The day the police sent 80 police cars, over 200 officers, plus horses to Adam's restaurant to shut him down. When 400 meters, I don't even think it was 400 meters away, right behind him, Costco sat. And there was thousands of people going into Costco with no issue. His restaurant typically held about 30 to 40 people. That was an issue, but not thousands of people behind him. And I never would have believed it had I not seen it myself. We couldn't even get close to Adamson Barbecue because the police had literally shut off, roadblocked every single street that led to his restaurant. You could go to Costco, but you couldn't go to his restaurant. And as we arrived, they were bringing in the horse trailers, and we saw them bringing the horses out. We finally found our way up to a bridge that looked down, like a roadway bridge that looked down onto Adamson's Barbecues. And I jumped out and I took pictures. If I hadn't been there, no way would I have believed that this could ever happen in Canada. No way. The horses, the police, they were taking people down. It really was the original trucker protest that happened here. They had the horses here first that trampled on people. They had the police here first that destroyed people, that threw them to the ground. People who are just waiting to get a brisket sandwich. I've never seen this before in my life. Unfortunately, I've seen it many times since. So
yeah, the billionaires got richer. It was the biggest wealth transfer in history. That's what this was. And
exactly.
They know we know it. We know they know it. They know they don't have the evidence. But the important thing is that this case is different. It's important we see it through. I will send a donation. It's more important than, me buying something silly this weekend. So
I keep
awesome.
saying to people, give up your Tim Hortons coffee for 1 week. If 5,000 people give $20, 5,000 times 20, that's $100,000. That pays what we're behind now, and it should cover us through the hearing.
And
Now-
Adam really, he was such an integral part in the beginning of bringing other people on board. The reason that for the convoy happened, everybody knows who Adam is that was awake since the beginning.
Yes.
And so the poor guy has been bankrupted, his life turned upside down. It's the least we can do.
Exactly.
You know, you put, no matter what happens with this case, you put it into karma and it somehow comes back to you. Every time I donate to something like this, something comes back triple. It's amazing. So let's keep that karma going, the energy flowing in the right place.
Exactly. And so many people thought Adam left. He didn't leave. He was forced out of Ontario. The police were harassing him all hours of the night. He had to claim bankruptcy, and the only place he could go that he could afford to go was Alberta. And Alberta has not been kind to him either, but he is still here. He's still fighting. And he's the original trucker. He's the trucker that is still standing for all of us. So thank you, Adam.
So givesendgo.com/barbecue_rebellion. Thank you so much, Jody, for coming in. We'll get this show out.
Thank you, Odessa.